Hi, everyone. I think we're still waiting for a couple more attendees to join in. So I think I am go ahead and gonna give it a few more minutes. So we have everyone before we start. But for those of you who have already joined in, please sit back and relax. We're gonna be going through quite a lot of content today. So yeah, take a break for now, and then we're gonna go a deep dive into the content later, okay? Okay, I think we're gonna go ahead and get started. So yes, before we officially start, I think, I see some familiar names here, for example, like Scarlett. I think you already know who I am, but and I also see like names from students who had just participated in our early app workshop. So, thank you very much for being here again on a Saturday. I know it's a lot of content. I know it's very daunting, but thank you for, sticking around and listening to yet another presentation from me. So for those of you who are new to Millie and new to me, my name is Ariel. I'm one of the co-founders of Millie, and I'm also the global head counselor of the company. So in terms of my background, I do assist students in terms of formulating the university list, brainstorming content for their personal statement, selecting their, final offer, and everything in between. So if you ever have any questions regarding your university application journey, anything you're unsure, be it US, UK, Canada, Europe, anything, just let me know, and I'm more than happy to help out. And before founding Millie, I was actually a university guidance counselor in two IB World Schools in Hong Kong. One of them actually is my alma mater. So it's very funny, just going back in the capacity of a counselor and working with, students who went to the same school as me, and helping them navigating their university application journey. So together, I have like 5+ years of experiences in education space, mostly with helping students achieving their university goals. And in terms of my academic background, I did obtain an IB diploma from the UWC, and then I moved on to Cornell University and finished my Bachelor of Science at Cornell for hotel administration. So yes, here I am today speaking with you. So if you have any question also, say if you want to apply to Cornell and then you want to know how it's like, please feel free to, pop a question and I'm happy to answer as well. So today, the meat of the presentation. I know it's a lot of things to cover actually, and I know personal statement is always a pain point for a lot of students. So I anticipate there to be a lot of questions. So, if you have any questions in between, please feel free to, write it down in the Q&A section. For some reason, I'm unable to, really open it, but then my host would help me copy and paste that into the chat room so I can tackle them. And I usually tackle all the questions at once after I finish each section. So for example, after I finish explaining the UK essay, then I'm going to address the UK sets of questions. And then, after I finish explaining the US side of the things, then I would address all the US personal statement questions in one go. Okay. So now, before we get started, I would actually want to talk about the agenda a little bit more. So first of all, today's agenda is divided into two very clear parts, with one being the UK. And, if you have any experience with the UK personal statement, you would know that it's very structured piece of writing. There's definitely more of a formula to it, and you're only required to write one personal statement. It's called the Ucas personal statement. Ucas is basically an online system that allows you to apply to any universities in the UK. So you can just select your university, select your program there, you copy and paste the personal statement there, finish the entire application form there, and then you would submit it there as well. Okay, so I would say that the UCAS statement is relatively more easy breezy in a sense that it's straightforward. It's one application to all schools, and you only need to write one piece of statement, and that support your entire university application. Okay, so we're going to go through some factual information about, what a UCAS statement is going to be like and what should you be writing about. And then on to the really complicated part of the things, they're basically the utter opposite, what the UK universities and US universities are looking for. So now, we touch on the easy breezy, straightforward one. Then the US is like, everything that the UK statement is not. First of all, it's divided into many different types of statements, and you oftentimes find yourself having to complete more than one. Many times, a dozen of essay, could be really common if you apply to, a few more universities in the States. So definitely your statements number adds up, as you increasingly, wanting to apply to different universities in the US instead of just sticking to one. And then the statement itself is also very different in terms of content. So what the universities are looking for, what you should be writing, and also the amount of time you need to actually reflect on your different experiences and coming up with good content for your personal statements also take a lot of time. Okay, so today we're going to be comparing, contrasting two essays. I think it's very interesting to juxtapose them together just because of how different they are. And I'm happy, if you have any questions regarding any part of my presentation, just, as I said, for newcomers, just use the Q&A function and jot down your question there. And I'm going to tackle it all in one go after each section of my presentation. Okay, so without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. The UCAS personal statement first. Always start with the easier one. Okay. So just some factual information about what a UCAS statement is. First of all, you need to know that only one statement is needed, as I said. So this is good news for you because, you don't have to write so much. And also, you don't have to cater it towards, the universities, right? Like which university you apply to, it doesn't matter. You only need to produce one statement. And on to the second point, this particular statement is very academically oriented, meaning the content itself should be really focused on how well you do academically and why you're interested in your chosen major. Okay, so, be very diligent in terms of discussing your aspiration, in the subject, and also your capacity and capability to excel in the subject. Thirdly, word count is extremely important. Okay, so because basically the UCAS system, when you copy and paste the entire essay onto the section that says personal statement, you cannot go over the character count. Otherwise, your essay is going to get cut off. And some students, they went over character count without realizing it, and then they keep, they just like went on and submit. You can see that part of the essays are being cut off. And also, UCAS also have a very special line count. I believe it was 37 line or something like that. So if you copy and paste and it exceeds the line count, it's likely that you have to, do some rewording of your statement. Okay, so be sure to check your word count diligently throughout your personal statement creating process to make sure that it's within the 4,000 word 4,000 character count. So you may ask, so okay, it says 4,000 characters, right? Like what does that mean? And how many words that is that translating into? So usually 4,000 characters, it's around 600 to 650 words, depending on your choice of words, and also whether or not you use a lot of punctuation, spaces, and things like that, because they also count towards the characters. So do think about your wording, meticulously, and, do pay attention to this character counts when you're working on your drafts as well. So now I talked about how, the UCAS statement is very academically oriented. You may ask, so what is a good distribution, the distribution between like, academic qualities, versus extracurricular activities? Can you include absolutely nothing regarding extracurricular? That's not really the case. I would say the ratio, the optimal ratio would be around 80% academic qualities or academic related content, and then 20% could be your extracurricular activities or involvements. However, that 20% of ECA, you also need to actively link it back to why this experience, even though it's extracurricular, could help you excel in your chosen major. Because at the end of the day, UK universities really care about how well you are doing academically. Okay, just keep this really like in your mind that you need to show them that you're a very good and qualifying student for this particular program that you're applying for. Okay, right. So now, I mentioned earlier that the UCAS personal statement is a very structural piece of writing. There could almost be a formula to how you should, put together the content for your particular statement. And there would also be a very clear line as to whether or not it's a good personal statement or it's like a, statement that needs improvement or tweaking in order to fit the UCAS requirements. They don't particularly say it online, but then there is definitely a pattern to what you should be including in your personal statement. Okay, so I have summarized it into 4 different questions that you should be answering in your personal statement for UCAS. The first one being, I keep on repeating myself here just because I can't stress how important it is for you to highlight exactly the reason why you're interested in your chosen major. But that doesn't mean, a lot of students, they translate this to something like, okay, I have become interested in like studying science ever since I was 3 years old, right? Like exactly how old you have become interested in this particular major is not important, but I want to hear the spark, the inspiration. Where does your interest come from? Is it because of a particular book that you've read? Is it because of a particular, summer school that you attended? What is it? Or any, for example, if you're interested in studying natural sciences, is it a particular natural phenomenon that made you interested in digging deeper into the realm of science? What is it that prompts you to apply for this major that you'll be studying for 3 to 4 years of your undergraduate life, right? So you have to be really precise with this and give anecdote, story, really precise and concrete a description of the reasons why you're interested in your chosen major. It doesn't have to be limited to just one. It could be a chronological order of like different events that made you or that points you towards this particular major, but there needs to be something unique that only you can include in your statement. Otherwise, it's not going to be very personal, right? So yes, this is arguably the utmost important part of your statement, and this should also be the opening of your statement. Okay. Now, second, you mentioned that you are really good, like you're just super interested in this particular major, right? Say, let's use engineering as an example. Okay, so you are an aspired engineer and you really want to study that in the UK. So you can say that the reason why you're interested in, studying engineering could be due to the fact that you're very interested in solving, the issue of sustainability, making, machines that are more efficient and effective. So that points towards your contribution in sustainability, the issue of sustainability, right? So that is your part 1 of the question. Now, part 2, you need to tell me, okay, I understand why you're interested, but can you tell me why you're any good? Right? So, okay, I could be really interested in engineering, but I'm not very good at math or physics. That doesn't make me a very good candidate, for this particular program. So you need to tell me exactly why you think you're qualified for this particular major. What is your academic strength that you can highlight that points towards this direction of the major that you've picked? Okay, so How exactly do you do that? Luckily, there's a very clear formula as to how you should structure your essay. Otherwise, it's going to be I've had a lot of students that include writings like, well, I'm really interested in math, so that's why I'm good at engineering, right? But then clearly there's something like there's a huge linkage missing here, and I'm going to be using the three-part sort of like proof process to guide you through exactly how you should be formulating your arguments for this particular paragraph. So now we've talked about the experience of like, you used like engineering as an example. So let's pick another one. Let's pick one that is more humanities based. So say law, right? So I want to do law in university. So how exactly do I prove that I can be a good student of law? So there could be three parts, to your argument, and each part is an integral part of your statement that you cannot omit. Otherwise, there will be one key thing missing from your piece of writing. So part A, identify the relevant subjects related to this major, right? So if I am to tell you that I want to study law, right? So what do you think are some of the relevant high school subjects? Can anyone answer? Just type your answer in the Q&A. Oh, actually, there are a few questions. Okay. Yep. Anyone want to give it a try? Oh, I see there's an answer, but I cannot click into it. 80. Yeah. Okay. History. I can see that. Okay. History. Good. Anything else? Social studies. If you are to study law, what do you think would be the relevant subjects in high school? Okay, good. History, social studies. Anything else? English. Okay, very good. So I have gotten a few, input, from you guys. Very good. Okay, now let's use history as an example, right? Because like two of you guys said history. Okay, yeah, absolutely. So you identify history as one of the potential subjects that can, relate to law, as a major, right? So now move on to part B. What are the transferable skills you managed to get from history? Why do you think history is linked with law? Nobody ever said anything about, if you're a history student, then you would be good at law, right? So I would, give two examples, of why I think if you're good at history, then you can be good at law too. So history gave me two transferable skills. One would be it helps me process, or it gives me the experience of processing dense academic text within a very short period of time. Because, in history, you have to do a lot of research, you have to do a lot of primary source evaluation, and you need to also form your arguments from these dense texts very in a very short period of time, right? So this is very relevant to law for sure. So this is one skill that you can mention that you have obtained from law. And then secondly, I think it's also good to say that being a history student, you're trained to look at, one historical incident in different perspective, right? So there may be different historians giving you different viewpoint, towards the same event. So evaluating different perspectives regarding the same event is also very important to law. So now you have two transferable skills that you manage to sort of evaluate from history as a high school subject. And now part C, now I have the subject, I have the skills, I need to link them to law. So going back to processing dense text, dense academic text, I think this is very relevant to law students because, you would be required to read a lot of dense readings before every lecture, and you're expected to be able to intelligently comment on the cases, the court cases, the verdicts that you've read, and all of which requires you to process these texts really quickly in a very accurate manner and to form your own argument. based on whatever is being presented to you in writing. So this is one key skill of a law student. And then secondly, if I'm able to look at one particular incident in different perspective, it also gives me the necessary skills to become good at law, because this is what law is about. If you are arguing on one side, you need to be able to see what are some of the potential counter argument, what would the judge think, what about your witnesses and things like that. So you need to constantly be thinking about, the same incident from different angle, different perspectives. And that is what history is able to give you, in terms of academic type of exposure, right? So that's how from identifying a relevant subject all the way to explaining why this particular subject enables you to excel, in law. I particularly picked law just because there's no high school subject called law. So if I want to study geography, in university, right? So I could be studying geography in high school, which is very relevant. You don't even need to really explain why it's so relevant. But then if you're thinking about a university major that does not really exist in a high school setting, you need to be able to identify the relevant subjects and the skills that they gave you and link it back to your chosen major. Is that clear? Okay. Yeah, actually, I see one more input, from the students. History helps memorizing things needed in law. Yeah, definitely. Because you need to memorize a lot of different historical happenings and things like that. And you need to be able to also use these knowledge, in terms of exam setting, right? You need to regurgitate, on top, you also need to provide your own insight and arguments into the historical incident. So definitely, it gives you, exposure in terms of memorizing factual happenings and being able to apply them in an academic exam setting, for sure. Very good. Okay, number 3, your academic and personal qualities through extracurricular involvements, so ECA, right? So I think here, it goes hand in hand with what I said earlier about you can sort of allocate 20% of your statement to ECA so that, you can so I mean, so the statement could be a little less boring, or less academically intense, for sure. But then, I also made it very clear that your extracurricular activities should have something to do with your chosen major. So for example, if you really like to play football, unfortunately, it doesn't really need to be there, in your Ucas. It could definitely be there for your US, but then it's definitely not as relevant for your Ucas statement, unless you tell me you're applying for a sports science major. That's a completely different story. But then for any other things that don't require, you to be in a sports setting a lot, then definitely doesn't need to be in your personal statement. Okay. Other than that, use the same 3-step proof process that I told you about, but then substitute the relevant subject with the substitute, extracurricular activities. And there, basically, you have the entire formula you need to explain your relevant extracurricular activities into your personal statement. Okay, so, just to recap, find the relevant extracurricular involvements that you have related to the major, find the transferable skills, from the activities or your exposure, and then link it back to your chosen major. Okay. Okay. Now, last but not least, how to wrap up, right? So, okay, now I have all these grand statements about me being really interested in this major, me being really good at this major, and both in the setting of academics and also extracurricular, right? So now what? How do I end the essay, right? So I think, there are a few good ways of ending the essay. One good way would be, since I think, we're largely, I think we have a crowd of international students here. So you may think about, okay, now ending the essay could be, okay, I could have chosen to study this exact same major, maybe in the US or in Canada or in Europe. Why UK, right? So you can actually, as an international student, I think it makes sense to end the statement by outlining your interest of, studying this particular major in the UK, because you have just picked another country of destination to study. That's completely fine. Why did you decide to do this particular major in the UK? So if you have a compelling reason, please feel free to share in the ending paragraph. or you can end on a more macro level type of like, outlook. For example, you can tell me what you're planning on doing, with your degree. Once you have completed this degree successfully, what do you hope to achieve, with this particular degree? That's also okay. So usually, the it could be, like your career outlook, your career aspiration. That could be one. Any positive influence or contribution you want to, have on your community with this particular degree. That's also okay. What problem or um what issues you would like to solve with this particular degree. That's also fine. So there could be many, many different ways of ending it. But then if I have to group them into two categories, and they're not mutually exclusive, you can tell me why you want to study this major in the UK, and you can also tell me what you plan on doing after your degree. Okay. Okay. So I think before we move on to Common App, okay, now it's time to tackle some questions, from the audience. Okay, let's take a look at the latest one, okay, from Selwyn. So in the highlight academic potential part, can I write about relevant experience on top of relevant subjects? E.g. dual program in engineering and university. Yeah, I think that could be one. And I think, that also can go into the category of explaining why you're interested in this particular major. So I think, what you say here, it's relevant in a sense that, it could be a research experience, right? So one of my students actually, he got into Cambridge for engineering this year. And as part of his statement, he, actually mentioned that he has done 2 academic research projects with professors in Hong Kong, engineering professors in Hong Kong, right? So that it's technically not really like a very academically oriented type of like, subject exercise or anything like that. But then that's definitely highly relevant, in terms of, applying for engineering in a UK setting. So that's why he included his research experience there, or like summer shadowing internship experience there. I think that's also okay. Good. Nikita asked, do we have to write such statements even for Canadian universities? For Canadians, sometimes, yes and no. So for example, universities like UBC, they do ask you to write personal statements, but then I would say that the style, it's right in between the UK and the US that we're about to explain. So it does value your academic potential, but at the same time, it also wants to see your ECA, versus, UK is like just academic, and US is more like personality, experiential, your personal sort of like, life experiences up until now and things like that. So Canadian universities like right in the middle. Yeah. But then some other Canadian universities like, UT in general, they don't really ask you to write that much. Mm-hmm. Let's see, anything else regarding personal statement? Okay, Ankita, is the event specific to undergraduate or graduate study? Could you clarify what event are you, referring to? But now here we are all talking about undergraduate studies. So if that helps, I mean. Yeah, so the particular Ucas statement that we're talking about definitely deals more with undergraduate studies. What marks do the UK universities usually look at? Like what grade specifically? Well, it depends. It depends on like the sort of like level of universities that you're looking at. So I would say, it also depends on, the curriculum that you're currently, studying. So that, I can tackle in a more, private setting. We do have another webinar that deals more with like university application, like as in, the grade requirements, for US, like, the standardized testing, like SAT, ACT, etc. So maybe you can also tackle that in that particular webinar. But An, thank you very much for your question. You can like, direct that to me, and then we can, solve it, in private. Yeah. And now let's talk a little bit more about university application statements. Okay. Okay, so moving on, like if you do have any additional questions, keep them coming. Don't worry, I'm going to tackle that. There's also going to be another Q&A session at the end of the, Common App section as well. Okay. So now, like onto the very daunting Common App statements. Even presenting it, already stressed me out. It's a lot of like very difficult writings. But then if you do know what it is, it's actually quite enjoyable to write, especially when you accumulate more life experience. Now I look back at my own Common App essay, slightly embarrassing, but I feel like, it's very true to what I was experienced back then. So yeah, it's still very, very good to read for sure. After 10 years, of graduating from high school, you can always look back at your, personal statement back then and then see, whether or not it's still relevant. Okay, some facts about the Common App statement. It's a 500 to 650 word statement all about you. I seldom see students keeping it to like such a low word count, like 500, that's definitely the minimum. But then, it's because 650 words is already not that much, if you are to explain, your experiences fully. So I would try to keep it to the 650 end. And, a lot of students, they actually end the statement smack at 650. That's totally fine. But then do observe the word limit. This is a very qualitative chance to show colleges what makes you unique. If you think about it, on to point number 3, if you're applying to top-notch universities in the US, all the other applicants, they're going to be like around the same level as you in terms of like grades and test scores, etc. So these are just numbers, right? So consider the university application statements as one chance to show the other side of you, other than numbers. Who are you, right? As a person, your characteristics, your personality, everything, right? So who are you exactly if we are to take the grades aside? Okay, so make sure that this statement shows different facets of you, and then you have many different chances of doing so because the Common App is not going to be the only statement that you write, for university application. So now I talk about Common App a lot. Actually just now, one of the students in the previous webinar asked me what is Common App. So once again, it's a centralized platform that you use to submit your application to universities. The Common App actually covers over 800 schools. It's the largest coverage that, online platform has, in terms of university application. First is there are other platforms like Coalition App, Universal App, they definitely cover much fewer universities, and many of them overlapping with the Common App. So for example, Universal App has a Harvard, but then Harvard also uses Common App. So if that's the case, I'd rather just stick with Common App than opening another one that requires me to write different sets of statements, right? So there's also another, very special system called the UC app. So the UC is specific to University of California. The UC system has 9 campuses in total. You only need to submit one application and you can pick it to go to all 9 campuses. So it's quite easy breezy in a sense that, it's like sort of like the Ucas, right? One app, it goes to all the selections of schools that you want. And then there are 4 essays, in the UC app. Each would be 350 words. So, definitely it's a shorter essay, but then there's like the quantity there. You need to complete 4. You need to select 4 prompts out of the 8 prompts provided. And you need to complete all 4 writings and submit it at the same time. Okay. Last but not least, there's supplemental essays. What exactly are they, right? So I talked about how there is one Common App essay that gets sent to all your Common App schools, but on top, each school would require an additional set of supplemental essay. For example, if I applied to Cornell, I remember I had to write 1 or 2 additional essays. And then if you are to apply to schools like Stanford, they actually have 11 essays for you to write. So the number of essays that you need to write depends on which school you apply to and how demanding are they with their personal statement requirements. Okay. And these supplemental essays, there are some type of questions that are really, really like straightforward, like why this program, why this school, why this university, right? But then there are also like some weird ones, like if you are to write your autobiography, what do you think would be on page number 297? Right? So, these kind of questions that you need to answer, it like the answer doesn't come in just overnight, right? It takes time to think about, to reflect on, think about the approach, as to which you want to answer your questions with. It's a lot of thinking and reflection going into these type of US essay. So definitely start the process early. So now, because like many of you are likely to write the Common App, so I have selected the Common App prompts here. I've inserted them here just so we can have a preliminary discussion of like what to expect for Common App. Okay, so there are 7 essays in total for the Common App. And don't freak out, you don't have to write every single one of them. You only need to write one. So out of the 7 prompts, pick one and really answer it to the fullest. Okay, so let's take a look at some of the common prompts. The first one, it deals with your background, identity, interests, or talents. So a lot of international students, they really like to write this one. I remember, I think that was the one that I wrote as well, because as an international student, you may have your home culture or home identity that you really want to share with the admission officer. This is usually, quite nice and more unique because, to be honest, this prompt is already quite encompassing. Anything about you, basically, that you would like to share with the admission officer. So it's like, straightforward, easy to write, but it's all about how you can make it into a more compelling story, attracting the admission officer to continue reading on. That's the key of this particular statement. The second statement deals more with challenge, setback, or failure. But point to note is that I know some students would like, put in content such as, oh, like I lost a competition, or like I didn't score really well in a particular exam. So to you, like, don't get me wrong, to you, that's definitely a failure, right? Like, or you think of it as like a challenge that you need to overcome. However, is this significant enough for you to include that into your Common App statement? I've heard from a lot of admission officers, they would comment on the fact that, okay, yeah, that's not the type of challenge that they're looking for. And they're looking for some like deeper, more, like more personal struggle, type of events that you have overcome. So not to say that it's not a good material to include, but then they're definitely looking at something a little bit more macro here. Okay. And then the third question deals with, a time when you question the challenge, a belief, or idea. So think of it as like, you challenging a status quo, right? So, why do you have this particular thought? And, did you act on it? What was the outcome if you did? So if you come from a society or a country that, basically has a lot of social stigma, I think this is, and then you question it and then you try to challenge it. This could be something very interesting for you to think about. And point number 4, this is actually new this year, is newly added this year. It's very interesting. I believe that, it's due to the, COVID situation. We became so very aware of like things that we can give thanks to. So that's why, the Common App also included a prompt here. Letting you include or letting you talk about, a particular incident or like someone that, made you happy or you want to show gratitude for. Okay, so, this is actually quite an interesting one to write. And since this is a new year of this being added in, I think, if you have something highly relevant, I think this would be a very, good prompt to give it a try. And prompt number 5, this is the utter opposite, of the prompt about challenge, setback, or failure. This is about accomplishment, event, or realization that spark, keyword here, spark a period of personal growth. So here we are not try to look at the accomplishment. You're not trying to outline the entire accomplishment, what you have done, what you have achieved. More like through this incident, this is a story, this is an anecdote. Through this as an example, can you illustrate to me how you have developed as a person, right? How you have grown, So it's more about you stepping out of your comfort zone, about you pushing yourself and achieving another level of, personal growth. Okay. And then number 6, I think this is like closer to the academic type of the question. Can you let me know a topic, idea, or concept that you find so engaging it makes you lose all track of time? So this is very interesting in a sense that, it's allowing you to outline and describe an idea that you really like and that you're very engaged. And the key point here is, why does it captivate you? So, why, like, where did your interest come from? So this part is actually quite similar to Ucas. But then, the odd part is like, what or who do you turn to when you want to learn more? So the concept doesn't need to be like fully like academic or anything. It could be like, for example, I'm very interested in human rights, exploring human rights, human justice, right? So you need to let me know, why does this topic captivate you? And did you act on it, right? Like, did you go and find yourself in like NGO to work in, interning with like, human rights activists, anything like that, right? So who do you turn to? Like, that's the part about who do you turn to when you want to learn more. Okay. Last but not least, there's the topic of your choice. A lot of students, they're very confused. Like, what do you mean by topic of your choice? So this, applies when you have a particular topic, but then you don't think it falls under any other, previous prompts that we talked about. So some students, they want to like highlight the fact that their statement is very unique. That's why they sort of like pick this prompt for the sake of picking it, because obviously nothing is more special than the topic of your choice, right? But then I've also heard admission officers saying that students are trying too hard, to pick prompt number 7, because when they start reading the statement, it can totally fit under the previous 6 prompts that we talked about. But then students have to like sort of single it out and tweak it into topic of your choice. That doesn't sound very natural, to read. And so I think the key point here is that don't feel like you have to pick it just to make your statement unique. Focus on thinking about what you really want to write, what you really think that the admission officer should know about you, and work backward. Does that fit into any other any prompts that we have talked about? And if it truly doesn't, then you can pick the topic of your choice. Make sense? Okay. Any questions about this before we move on to the timeline of preparation? Any questions? Okay, so let's move on to personal statement creation timeline. Okay, so exactly how long does it take for you to produce like the entire statement? Actually, the time spent, it's quite long, especially when you're new to this, or especially when you're working on a particular piece of writing that is extremely important, like your Common App that gets sent to all the schools. Definitely allocate enough time to produce your statements, produce the drafts, refining the drafts, and letting other people read a little bit of it, and to give you some comments. So how do you usually spread out the time? I would say that it could take easily 6 weeks to work on a particular essay. And the week 1, 2, you can focus on reading statements that work, because if you Google online, you can actually see a lot of statements from successfully admitted students. Read some of those and see whether or not it makes sense to you. See whether or not you can identify patterns of like particularly good statements. What do they all have? What is a common quality? Not asking you to like copy the content for sure, but then just to see, what worked and why they worked. Okay. And then I would also take the time to read the prompts over and pick the one that you're most confident to write about. Here, I don't think you need to write like all of them. Some of the students, the strategy is to come up with a draft for all the prompts, and then they would pick the strongest one. However, I think that's not a very good strategy, because first of all, it's very time consuming. Second, you're diverting too much of your effort, spreading out too much of your effort, to deal with all prompts. And I feel like that compromises the quality of each essay. So it takes a lot of time for you to, even after you picked one that you particularly like, it takes a lot of time to like polish and refine that one, just because you didn't spend that much effort drafting it in the first place. So I think, for week one, you can definitely start brainstorming ideas on several topics that seems interesting to you. And then you pick the one, that has the most potential, that you're most confident in. Okay, so week three, you can already start writing a rough draft of your essay. And then definitely show your mentor, show your guidance counselor, or show your teacher the drafts and see what they think about it. And then you use week 4, 5 to revise your essay and show it to people that you're really close with. It could be a close friend. It could be your parents who should know you the best, and ask for any feedback. Don't distribute it, to everyone though, because you're gonna get very confused once you start hearing all the different feedback. Some may say that this part is good, some may say that that part is no good, take it out, but then they might have opposite sort of opinion. Don't confuse yourself, just keep it to a very close circle that you have, and keep it with your mentor, with your guidance counselor. And then after that, do take time to read the essay again and find grammatical and spelling errors, if any. You can even close the file for several days without looking at it at all, and then come back to it with a fresh pair of eyes and see if you have missed out on anything. Sometimes it could be like running sentences. It could be like, just typo that you missed out. Always, take a second look at it, and see if you have picked out anything that you couldn't pick out, from the process of you writing it. Last but not least, remember to copy and paste your personal statement to your college application. Yeah, I've had some panic cases where students, forgot to actually attach their personal statement. So yeah, don't let that happen to you, or like they attach the wrong version. This happened all the time. It's not the final version that they've worked on. They have submitted the wrong draft, to the university. It's very, very nerve-wracking. So definitely do make sure that you take time to check your personal statement, many, many times before you actually click the send button. Okay, now any questions? I think there are two. Okay, so from Selwyn, how do we write the introductory paragraph? That's a very good question. A lot of students usually start by narrating a story, one particular time point in your life. For example, one of my all-time favorite essay, the student wrote about his insomnia. Okay, so his first paragraph was a story about, him suffering from insomnia when he was a child. And then through that, he was actually not talking about insomnia. He was talking about how he found solution to insomnia. That is like, listening to classical music, right? And then eventually he became so captivated by the classical music that he started having insomnia again, because he started like humming and appreciating the music rather than sleeping. And that's why he wants to major in music, in classical music when he goes to university. So you can see that, a lot of Common App statements, they start from a small idea or a small piece of stories that happened in the candidate's life. And then it moves from this one little point into one complete statement. And in between, there could be a lot of additional materials about your life or about your thinking, your reflection, your insights that you want to add in there. And that leads to why you want to, go to the US to study for universities, or why you're interested in attending undergraduate program in the States, or attending this particular undergraduate program. Okay, so I think a good way of starting it, think about what would make the admission officer want to read on. A good story is always attractive. And I feel like, good statement should have elements like that to keep your audience engaged. Don't just start off with very plain or mundane sentences. Start with something that, would make you want to read on. Okay. Okay, and another question. Can we write things like interest in music here? Oh my God, I didn't see that question, that came next. Definitely, it didn't like my all-time favorite statement was all about music. I mean, he was a music major, but then there's totally nothing wrong. Even if you don't apply to music as a major, you can totally, write things about your interest in music. But then the point here is that, from one small things, you sort of expand into something more macro. Why is this significant to your life? What do you hope to achieve? What I try to do here, right? Like, with this particular experience of studying undergraduate degree in the States, what good are you trying to do, with your degree, with your future career and things like that. So from one minor thing, one tiny thing, and it should expand to something meaningful, your outlook in your life. Okay. I also have one question. Can we only submit one of the prompts? You only need to pick one. Yeah, once again, if I didn't explain that clearly just now, 7 prompts, you pick one to submit. You don't write all. Yeah. Question from Scarlett: would entering a graduate school be considered a future plan? Yeah, for sure. But then also, what are you hoping to achieve, with graduate school? I think it's more like the macro sort of purpose and idea that you have for your life. And okay, I have this particular interest, or I have this particular story, and I've experienced this and that in my life as a student. In my case, in Hong Kong, right? So, okay, then what are you gonna do with this experience? Why is it significant? And then in the future, what are you hoping to do? So more like a future outlook in life. So even if you're talking about your intention to apply to grad school, I think it's also nice to go beyond that and tell me what are you hoping to achieve. Okay. Yeah. So I think, I also have one question, regarding, okay, I see what you mean. So for topic of your choice, it could literally be anything, including a poem that you wrote about, a time in your life, or like, any particular, like, I think more unique type of essay. But then at the end of the day, you're applying for universities, right? You want the university to know who you are as a person and what you're hoping to achieve, and what have you done, up until this point in your life, and what are you hoping to do subsequently in the future, right? So I think it would be nice, if you have a piece of writing that would show the admission officers who you are as a person, as a student, but also, touch upon these things. So I think, if you have any additional pieces of writing that you would like them to take a look, or, you have other materials that you want to include, you can maybe utilize the supplemental statements. But I feel like it's important to think about the ultimate purpose of this particular exercise, and really think about what you want to highlight to the admission officer. There could be more than one point that you want to highlight. For example, I like music plays a really big part in my life. And I remember I wrote about, me being in a very traditional Hong Kong secondary school, and I felt like my intellectual curiosity has not been fully discovered or satisfied. I just always wanted to learn more out of syllabus things. I just always want to answer more questions. It's never enough. So my statement was about, how I switched from my local secondary school, seeking like an environment that allows me to, get more of my questions answered and to feed my intellectual curiosity more. And then, in the future, I want to go to the States because I still have a lot of unanswered questions. And I feel like, that's where I could get my answer, right? So what you have experienced, where you are now, and where you want to be in the future. It's very important. Okay. Another question, if we write about passion in the statement, then where will we mention about academic achievements? You don't need to do that, for the US because as I mentioned, the US statement focus is very different from that of, the UK. It's more about, your personal sort of like, experience, upbringing, your life experiences so far. Academic achievements, they can see it from your transcript, they can see it from your SAT, ACT, whatever, standardized test scores that you submit, right? So those are the numbers that you would already log. But then you don't really need to, highlight that. There's also another part that allows you to highlight the awards that you have won, or like activities that you have done, things like that. So you can include those things in in that particular section, but then you don't need to use the statement to highlight further. Okay. One more question. How much do US unis value change because of self-reflection? I'm thinking of writing my essay about that, but I'm scared admission officers will be turned off and think that my past self was too unappealing. Okay. It's all about ratio. For that, it's like your personal statement should always focus on a more positive notes, for sure. But then all of us, we, just like me, using me as an example, right? We have like come a long way, from our past experience. Like, I used to be not as engaged, as like a student when I was in secondary school, a local secondary school, because I was just not given the environment to, and I'm seeking to become better, right? And I feel like, for this particular question, I think it's important to not focus on your unappealing past, as how you put it. That should just be like a beginning, like a point that you use to tell the rest of your story. So that could be a very minor start. Don't put like 50% of your essay describing how your past self was. That should not be the focus of your statement. Maybe 5%, so you can talk about this as a context, for the remaining part of the essay. And the remaining content should focus on how you have become better. What have you done to overcome this? And how have you improved? And what are you now, right? So 95% of the content should be that. And, the sort of unappealing past self part should only be an introduction to the entire essay. Okay. Yeah, like, okay, so this student is very informed about our offerings. Yeah, we do offer internship for high school students. Yeah, definitely this could be used as an extracurricular activities to be inputted, in your application to university as well. Yeah, they don't really need proof of internships or anything, but then although we're happy to offer like, reference letters and things like that, but then, they don't really require you to submit that. But then maybe after you get in, they might request, sometimes to send them scanned copy of like these materials. But then usually they trust students to self-report the achievements. So yeah, you can definitely include that in your as part of your Common App. Okay, Megan, is there a general word limit to a personal statement or is it specific for each country? So I definitely think that it's specific for each country. For example, UK is 4,000 characters. The Common App is like 650. And then for each supplemental essay, they have different word counts, which they specify in the website. In Hong Kong, they don't really have that many types of statements like the US, but then the general rule of thumb would be around 1,000. Versus, some like Canadian universities, they would have like different word counts for sure. It could be not just like different country to country, but also university to university. But then they state it very clearly in the website or in the application portal. So just be sure to check that. Okay. So I'm just going to quickly go through like, just final remarks, do's and don'ts. Okay. So as a summary of like what was being covered today, because like we talked so much about like, the requirements of the essays, but like, just tips and tricks really quickly. Do discuss transferable skills you have learned in class, be it for Ucas or like, UK, like the UK or US. Don't give me a list of what you have done. We don't need a laundry list of what you have done. If we need that, we would refer to the resume, right? It's a piece of writing. So make sure that you have like, anecdotes, you have stories, but at the same time, you have concrete example of what you have done and your outcome, reflection, insights. These are the important parts, not what you have done, but what you have learned, okay? And do check your work carefully. Grammatical mistakes, choice of words, spellings, terminologies, especially if you're writing UCAS piece of statements and you're explaining your interest for the major, make sure you get the terminologies correct. UK versus US spelling. If you are to apply to both countries, do try to convert the spelling, because they do spell like words differently, UK versus US. So do take note of that and make sure that you're converting them accordingly. I mean, they can still read, but I feel like it's better. It's definitely making a better impression if you convert the UK to UK spelling, US to US spelling. And do make sure that the statement is about you. So I have had, experiences dealing with student statements that they think they need to like talk about their inspiration for a particular subject, right? And then they would like say, oh, my mom is my inspiration to study this particular subject. My mom is this and that, like she's amazing. And she like, so before they realize the entire statement is about the mom, not about themselves. So do keep the content about you. It's okay to talk about inspiration, but then keep it like if you're talking about like someone else's achievements, like keep it brief, but always refer it back to you. And then, as I said, don't list out things or experience. Don't give me a laundry list. And then second, don't lie or copy and paste information into your personal statement, because sometimes, when you go through interviews, like alumni interviews in the US or like, UK, Oxbridge style academic interview, they would grill you, in terms of, what you've written in the personal statement. If you've read a book that you've never actually read, but then you put it there just because you read the abstract or summary of it. You may find it really embarrassing to not being able to intelligently discuss, the book content, when you're doing an in-person interview. Don't procrastinate until the last second. I use second, not minute, because I know students can be like really, really last minute. So yeah, as from what you have seen in the content just now, these are not pieces of writing that can be churned out overnight. So do allocate plenty amount of time to think about what you want to write and give yourself enough time to, polish, refine your content afterwards. Last but not least, don't need to use overly long or fancy words or like really complicated sentence structure. The whole thing is like the whole point of writing this is for admission officers to be easily like able to comprehend what you're trying to tell them, your story, keeping them interested, right? Like if you're giving me a piece of statement that, like full of SAT words, like I have no idea what you're trying to write because the sentences are too long, too complicated, I would probably like just put it down after a couple of minutes, right? The whole point is you want them to keep reading and have a good understanding of who you are as a person after they finish reading. So don't need to like do anything extra like that, but rather like be thoughtful about your content, but you don't need to like, overly like put in excessive words, excessive, sentence structures in there, or like don't need to be like really extra about your statement. Okay, keep it simple, keep it easy to read, but keep the content nice. Okay, the content is the key. Okay. So now on to how we can help. Yeah, actually we have just devised a new group writing workshop, something just like this, right? So we can go through a lot more samples together. We can talk about, your outline, your ideas, as a group. Don't like a lot of students, they are worried about like them sharing their personal statement idea would like result in it getting stolen by other people, I guess. But then writing is a collaborative process that could be like really fun. You can also learn from like your peers. You can learn from the mentor as to, what is a good outline, what is a good personal statement versus, what you need to improve on. So, that's why we have devised, such a workshop, for you to join. And I feel like, with 6 to 10 students is like definitely the optimal class size, for us to, discuss your ideas in depth and to, really compare and contrast, different ideas. And here you can actually select your lesson type, just to go through very quickly of what we can offer. So here you can see that, there's an outline of like what is included in this particular workshop. So first of all, we have a deep dive, of personal statement 101 lecture. We are going to go through a lot of like successful, statement. I'm also going to be walking you through my favorite essay actually. So here, you can see week 1, we would have the lecture. And after that, you're supposed to come out with your personal statement outline as homework. And then for group workshop 2, we're going to be discussing your outline and go through more examples and do some live critique, of the, personal statement outline that you guys come up with. And then thirdly, your homework 2 would be your first full draft. Okay, full draft. So you can pick either to work on your Ucas essay or the Common App essay. And then you come up with the full draft. And then after that, we would evaluate the draft and we would, pick and choose more examples to talk about and then see how you can refine your essay to make it better. And then the homework 3 would be your second draft, more polished, improved drafts. And with this draft, you would come to, our mentor for a one-on-one review, just to talk about your refined, polished drafts and see how we can, finalize it and make it even better. And after week 3, you should have a complete statement ready to go, college ready. It should be like copy and pasting onto your submission portal and clicking the submission button. Okay, so this is like, the idea, of our group workshop. Hopefully this would especially give the grade 12 students a little bit of like insight as to, so sometimes you may have the full drafts ready, but then you don't quite know whether or not it's good enough, or you sort of want to hear second opinion from experienced mentor or writing coaches. So this is the perfect chance for you to do so at a very affordable price. Okay, so if you would like to join, feel free. I believe our host would also be giving you the link to this particular session, and you can definitely, click into our, website link, select your essay type. It could be Ucas or it could be Common App. Right now we have workshops for these 2 particular essays because they're very different from one another. I don't want to group students who are working on 2 completely different types of essays together. So you can select and then you can add it to the cart and just check out accordingly. Okay. So thank you very much for being here with me today. I know it's a lot of content. Thank you very much for bearing with me. Any last questions that I can answer? Okay, so how do we decide which topic would be most appealing? You don't decide which topic is most appealing. You work backward. You think about what you want to talk about. You think about what life experience that you really want your admission officers to know. What is so special about you that you really want to highlight? You work backward and then pick the prompt accordingly. Yeah. Don't fit the content to the prompt. Don't fit the content to the prompt as if like, you have to work around the prompt in order to like fit your life experience into it. It should be the other way around. What do you want to say? And then find the right prompt. Okay. Yeah. Any additional questions? Yeah, Anne, I'm happy to, take your questions later. I believe you also, sign up for, consultation as well. So yeah, for, any questions related to like, application specific or like, just like university application 101 in specific, we can tackle it later. Yeah. Any questions about personal statement? Any last ones? Okay. Okay, thank you very much. On a Saturday night, I mean, like nighttime here, Hong Kong time. Thank you very much for attending my sessions. And, I'm very happy that, we had such an engaging session. We have talked about so much and I've answered so many questions. I think that's probably one of the, webinars that I've answered most questions, in. So yeah, thank you very much for being such an engaging audience. And yeah, I hope to see you in our group writing class. And yeah, thank you very much.